Does she pay for that lighting?
Connected to her supply.
So how do we go? Do we do something about that or not? Or is it so negligible?
Parish Council might decide to make contributions to her each year for the cost of
Well, if the light needs to replace the light, because the light isn't working at the
Oh, is it right? Okay. So
Oh,
if we
right,
actually do that,
okay.
then do we?
If we had an LED light in there, it would
yes.
cost about, if it was on for 4 hours a day, every day, it would cost about 40p electric usage. It's ridiculously low, these LED lights.
How much?
Okay.
About 40p.
This is a job from Martha's Bunkum.
What?
That's
40 times.
Yeah.
She has to be.
Well, I'll go and have a look for it. Can you, is it just a light in the top?
Yeah,
Or is it,
Shroud on
is it coming in?
Yes.
Oh, right, oh, right.
Probably have a special key, isn't it?
Yeah.
So another thing is, we're checking 6 months' time to see how it's gone, if you're happy with it, if we've had any vandalisation in there, because you could do, couldn't you?
Yes.
And just see if you're happy with the way it's gone, and if not, we change our mind about what we do.
Thank you, Ella. That sounds excellent.
So are you going to check it? I'm sorry, Bob. Are you going to? Are you and Kim just going to check it
As we
on a
go
weekly
past, we're going
basis?
to go in.
And will you liaise with Caroline, make sure you haven't duplicated what she's got on the window?
Well, we might do that though, you see. Might be if a school has an event, she'll have it in the window. But that won't matter, will
Because
it?
not everyone will go into the...
You won't take the revenue away with people advertising for...
Could we encourage
We want
the,
to be careful about that,
could
definitely.
we encourage the children to do some artwork
Yeah, fine.
on
Yeah,
a termly basis?
Yeah.
Suggest to the
yeah.
headmaster that we have pictures from the children of the village or related to the village.
One thing Brian said, which is brilliant, contact numbers. I like this Clark Vicar post office.
Be careful about GDPR.
French
If you're putting details in the public arena, you may be in danger of overstepping the mark as far as GDPR is concerned.
But you'd have to ask them, wouldn't you?
You have to ask them. As long as you ask them and they give permission, that's fine. So you let me know who they are, I'll write them, email them or whatever, and ask their permission as to whether we can use their details.
yourself.
I'll write myself, yeah. I talk to myself quite frequently.
I think Donna and Kim are going to have to proactively manage it, because I know when we had the wooden notice board outside the front of the hall that was open to everyone to do stuff, it got plastered all the time with lots of fly posting of things from nothing to do with the village.
Really?
Yeah, so you do need to be just regularly going in there and taking out stuff that you really don't need. Perhaps the article write
services in town.
in big highlighted letters, underlined and triple underlined and all the rest of it. This is for village use only.
Okay.
Yeah, presumably, with regard to that, actually, presumably we'll keep an eye on it,
Very much.
with regard to security, and it's really bad
Exactly.
we have to think about locking and something like that during the quiet hours, perhaps.
Are we having a gin dispenser?
Of course, if it doesn't work, we might have a defibrillator.
Yeah.
That would be the next thing.
Well, you can still have
Right, tenants
Right, okay, moving on.
Didn't you hear what Peter said?
You could rent it out to the UKIP's annual conference.
I said the branch line was too big.
You'll be there.
I was informed tonight that President Trump, having sacked his many colleagues and whatever, his only friend he's got left is
Hillary Clinton.
Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage. Anyway, right, moving on. Quotes and options, place services, working group, it says.
Right, in the end, Peter and I took the thing to conclusion, and I sent out a brief to everybody, so that all the facts are there, and so all I can do is assume you all read it. And I did that rather than to go through the whole thing again. So, have you read it, the brief?
Yes.
And what do you want me to do, just to run over the main points?
Right.
Yeah, just like-
One of the main points. Okay, we had,
Well, Morgan hasn't.
Yeah, Malcolm hasn't seen it, so we
Yeah.
have to remember it.
okay. We originally had quotes from four contractors. One's DCM Surfaces up in Oxford, the other is GB Sports in Weston-super-Mare, Star Rubber in Langport, and Shaw Bond in Bridgewater. And they came out and quoted for the original idea of just putting a surface over the rubber mats. And the two firms who were way out on price were DCM Surfaces in Oxford and Star Rubber in Langport. They were way ahead. So the only two people were Jubilee Sports and Shaw Bond. I would say...
What's in there, that the material, there's nothing, although they were more expensive, but the material wasn't superior, it was still the same, wasn't it?
Well, I just wanted to say, actually, if you allow me to speak, all the contractors gave virtually the same advice. So that was very, very helpful. And Shaw Bond and GB Sports gave the most competitive price from the beginning. The council then agreed that we should replace all the play surfaces with the exception of the surface around the trim trail, which could be left for a later date. And then, having taken advice from both Shaw Bond and GB Sports, they agreed, because you could either have a mulch, which is a rather coarse mat, or have EPDM. That is EPDM, which I will pass around, and that is a rubber bonded surface, and they all agree that that is the easiest surface to keep clean, because you can jet it. So that was the most reliable surface. We then thought about it, and it was obviously better, we get a very much better surface if we took the tiles away, because they're in a mess anyway, and so all the tiles ought to be removed. So through a contact, I got hold of Clifton Beagles.
The foot harriers. The foot harriers.
I thought you...
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They are going to take all the tiles and will collect them. So that will not necessarily having tips and things like that, costing a lot of money to get rid of, because they're really difficult to get rid of. So we then agreed tiles away and the four surfaces. And so I asked GB Sports and Shaw Bond to revise their quotes to accommodate exactly what we wanted. GB Sports...
Hang on, John. The four surfaces, just to be clear, are where the multi-purpose play area is.
Swings,
The swings,
Little
the
rocker.
roundabout.
Little Rocker and the roundabout.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So, to do that, GB Sports quoted in this particular way to remove the edgings and take up the tiles, then put down the wearing surface and put something called Hera safety fencing around. So you put fencing around to stop the kids going on it whilst it's setting. And that would be for £8,550.
Including VAT or ex VAT, John?
That is X. That is X. Shaw Bond, quoted in a slightly different way, but it's the result is the same. Uplift the tiles. They would put a base surface down on the stone and then put a wearing surface on top of that. So they would put a double surface. The depth would be the same either with GB Sports or for Shaw Bond. And then here is safety facing around, and their total was £7,245, which means that it was £1,304.50 cheaper than GB Sports. I was asked to get a quote for a coloured finish rather than plain black. By the way, plain black, it'll either be plain black or white fleck. Plain black, white fleck, exactly the same price. Those are the prices that have been quoted. Should you want to go for a colour, and in fact, I was talking to Shorebond about it, and they said, well, I don't think you want to have a straight, bland green. It would be much better if it was mottled. It wouldn't make much difference, actually, but there would be a mixture of two greens on the surface. But that is an extra £3,900.
The fact of the matter is, if I might join...
Can I just finish, please? And there is a difference in the plain black and the coloured, because that comes from recycled tyres, and if you go for coloured rubber, it has to be specifically manufactured. Finished.
Brilliant.
John, can you just pass that over, please? Thank you.
How is that fixed to the ground?
It goes down on a fixture.
Oh, I see.
They put a fixture.
So they clear it?
Oh yes, it's going to be clean. Yeah, again, well, what they would have done in the first place, they were all talking about putting it down on the tiles. They'd have to bond it onto the tiles with a fixative, but the tiles themselves aren't secure, so the better result is get rid of the tiles.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I might speak, also, our chosen people between GP Sports and Surebond has nothing other than this sort of thing, but GB Sports got fingers in several parts.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I would say is two things. GB Sports will only give a 5-year guarantee. Surebond, who are cheaper, will give a 10-year guarantee.
That's important.
Surebond can get on with it. And GB Sports said, well, yeah, you know, we could fix it probably in August. So they were a little bit iffy. So,
John, what's the depth that they're going to lay?
about 40 centimetres.
Okay.
Both of them?
That surface, I know you look at, that surface is
How much?
used on lots of play areas. That it's. I forget where I was, but I went to one play area and it had that play surface down, and it was.
I think we went over
I
to
guess it's better in the real world than a small sample.
Yeah, and the other one, what do you call the other one?
It's mulch.
The mulch is coarse.
Fibrous,
You-
all this together.
And
And if it's not done properly, what the children will do is start picking it.
Did you say 40 centimetres in depth?
40 metres.
40
Millimetres.
millimetres. 40 millimetres.
Ah,
40 millimetres, yes, sorry.
2 inches? I thought they meant 40 centimetres.
No, 40 millimetres, sorry.
No, it's John, it's all right. I just...
So the quote, in fact, actually, Simon from Shorebond has been more than helpful and comes on the spot, very keen to get on with it, and his quote, to go for black speckled, 7,245. That's got my email. You've got a copy of that. Those are, I think you've got a copy of the quotes. Do you want those?
I bet I have them, yes.
You've got them on your
I've
computer.
got my computer, but I mean, you've got them on your computer as well, I'm presuming?
Yeah, well, I've not read them actually.
Okay, right.
But so really, that email came out under, because I agreed this with Peter, and we said like push it out, and so really our advice is take Shorebond in Bridgewater.
Malcolm?
Is it porous?
Oh, I guess it is.
2 and
I don't
3.
know.
2 and
2 and 3.
It must be.
So that
You won't get
it will
to
soak
water.
through, or will water lay on it?
Well, I mean, I
thought it was
But on the run off it, wouldn't it? There's nothing under
I was rather interested by the Sporters quote. They've got John Harper here, Brent Knoll Parish Council in Cornwall, and they've got delivery address, Brent Knoll Parish Council in Nash Road. So I think they got totally confused, didn't they? So I don't think they knew whether sending anything.
I guess this guy, you've got this contact now at Shorebond. Can we just ask the question, John? Could we just ask the question of this guy at Shorebond?
question
the event of a downpour, would the water drain away, or
I think just a bit of both.
Won't be slippery, will it?
Very well, very
It is anti-slip, isn't it?
Oh, gosh,
Yes,
that's brilliant.
It is, yeah, okay.
No, I just think we just ask the question.
But
But it is a very, very traditional service to put on play services. That's what you're going to get.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say, Chairman, I support the recommendation of shore bond that's being made, shore bond. The only query I was going to ask was, after the last meeting, we all went up and had a look at the trim trail to see what state it was, and there was some stuff there off the safer surface that had been chipped and stuff, so that it had got rotting. But the A-frame part is pretty solid. The report we had from GB Sport highlights we've got a problem with the safer surface under there in the sense of trip hazards and all the other problems we have on the others. I just wonder whether we'd be able to go with shore bond but ask them to do the bit around the A-frame at the same time.
If you remember, the guy, when he looked at it, the guy from GB Sports said that, in his opinion, it wasn't used very much. I know Brian will say it's the most used piece, and it may well have lived its life as a piece of kit. But if the parish council feel that this is what they want to do, I'm more than happy to go with that.
Because the only bit that's got the safer surface which is being flagged up as a problem is the bit around the A-frame. It's not the bit on the jungle bars, because that's different anyway. But and that's a relatively small, it's not a huge area, and if we're going to get them out here, it would be a
But
lot
we
cheaper.
debated this, and it was decided that we just went for these other.
yeah.
The only reason I raised it, Pete, was because we said that at the time when we had the report that it was knackered, and at the last meeting we all went up there and had a look at it and said, actually, it's not as bad as GB
It's not as
Leisure
knackered
or
as GB Sports.
There's part of it that's got a bit of a wobble on, but that's not the A-frame.
And I thought the idea was that as soon as we did all these 4 pieces, that we would come back and the next thing would be to decide what we were going to do with the trim trail, because it was all about taking it away and
Yeah,
putting
but
something else there.
I think, with respect, Peter, that after the last meeting, Bob is absolutely right, because we went and had a look at it, there was only one post that was wobbling, generally wobbling, and that is not on the surface. And it may be that, and I guess that's relatively easy to repair.
Well, I was just about to say, because I was asked the question, is it easy to repair? And Simon said, yes.
So if that is the case, then it may be more economic to do the whole lot than come back on a special
I
day.
would say hang fire and have these 4 pieces done, and then we'll see what sort of.
I agree with that.
Malcolm?
Is each play area individually made to measure in this?
It's poured.
It's poured. Oh, right.
It's a mixture like it. So it's
Like tarmac,
like
ish,
Oh,
when
right.
they can put it down.
Right, it's not in a sheet.
There was only one little extra actually, and that is the roundabout. It will be best, David, if we can come in with the tractor, please, and lift the roundabout off its pivot so they can do it properly. Could you do that sometime when they come to do it?
when you
Right, sorry.
Just ask about the financing of it,
Yes, I was just going to ask her.
please.
We'll go on to that in a second. Let's deal with Bob.
was only going to say, again, in terms of the trim trail bit, if we don't do it, and I'm fine if we don't do it, but we have to do something, because we've got it highlighted, we've got trip hazards and gaps in the existing stuff, so we're doing all of this because of health and safety, and we say we need doing. If we don't do the trim trail bit this way, we have to do something to it.
So
because
are
it's
we
been
pushing
highlighted
more
on
money
that.
after that?
Yeah, I think the other point is, if you say you're going to do something with the trim trail, 1, what are you going to do? 2, what are you going to put there? 3, it's going to cost a lot of money. So it may well be that you don't do anything with that trim trail for years. So it may well pay us to do the surface now and get it done.
And let's be honest, if we had an accident on the trim trail and we had resurfaced the other areas, the judge would say, why didn't you do that one, having identified it all as trip hazards?
Yeah.
And also, actually, there is a couple of posts which are wobbling a bit and maybe they are rotten underground. But having said that this is reparable and you could whip out the posts, put something in there and
Is there a deal to be done with Shoreham on this? I mean, obviously they're coming to do the other job.
Yeah.
You could say the parish council are considering the additional item, but we were looking to you for a particularly competitive rate on that one, because they're coming to do the job anyway. So what is it going to add to it just by doing the additional item?
Can we go back to the, I think the first thing to do is to go back to them and ask them for an extra road on that area, please, John.
that will mean we delay for 2 months then.
Could we not, I mean, if we're happy with the quote we've got here, could we not agree that we go ahead and it's up to the working party to negotiate with them the best price, as long as it's not, if it's proportionate to what we've done here, it seems that they're very much cheaper than everybody else.
My only concern is we are in July. When is the school going to finish? And we're going to have the summer holidays. And I suspect the green will be used more than.
And they won't be around about for a few days.
So I would have thought if we got the work doing, can we not plan it for at the start of the school?
September.
When the schools go back in
After the
September?
school holidays.
After school
How long
holidays.
does that take to set?
Hmm?
How long does it take to
I
dry?
think a couple of days, I think. So.
Okay.
Yeah, so really, if we, I'm not pouring water on the work that you've done and what you want to do. I know you want to do it now. But I think probably the best thing to do is to go back to him and say, look, you are very favourable. Can you do a deal? You know, talk to him commercially.
Yeah.
Can you do it for another 500 quid or something?
Well, I doubt that. But
Well, can-
Yeah, and try.
You can try.
There's another option, of course. It's almost certain that we should have to have another parish council meeting for a planning application between now and September. I'd be amazed if we don't get at least one of the major applications coming in for the 1st of August, in which case we'll have another meeting, another opportunity to agree on whatever John is able to negotiate at that meeting.
I could get, I'm sure, I could get an answer on that for next week. And I could bang it around with an email.
Yeah, but as a point of principle, I think we would be not foolish, but I think almost foolish not to do the whole lot, as Bob has said, because of the same risks apply to each of the areas. Let's sort it once and for all.
Are we getting a grant then? We've got some money.
No, we'll
Come on to
we're
finance.
coming to
Sorry,
financing in a
sorry.
minute. Can we agree that that is the colour we'd like to go for? Because I think that that black and white is particularly attractive. I think that looks nice. I only said about colour because I know black's not particularly favourable and dull and not awful, but that is better than the pure tiles.
And I can confirm with Shawbond that, thank you very much indeed, it was a very favourable quote, and we'd be very happy for you to continue it. But, come on, we need a deal to do the extra.
Yeah, okay.
And I will get a quote for the extra.
And can make pencils in for
September.
but we'll have a vote on that in a minute. The
Well, we'll
important
have
thing is
another
now,
meeting before that one.
well, not necessarily.
Well, I think we probably
We
will.
may do, but
Well,
let's
either in the first September.
Well, I'll check with him, see if we do it in September.
how are we going to finance it?
Yes.
Right. Well, I thought the easy thing to do this evening was just let you have a summary of our financial situation, so that you could actually see where I thought we were going to end up at the end of the year. It's extremely difficult, it's only the first quarter of the financial year. But also on that sheet I've identified what our fixed reserves are. Now obviously the Clerk Maturity Election Fund are sort of non-touchable in a way. The Community Solar and the Sill Fund are. So they are effectively available to us for whatever we choose to use them for. Bearing in mind, of course, that we've got the £4,000 for the finger posts, so actually 3.5 because we're going to be claiming back VAT. So 3,500 for the finger posts. That also needs to come out of somewhere, either the Sill Fund, part of the Community Fund, or even our operational reserves.
Yep.
Our operational reserves, I estimate, in the period forecast, and it does depend on whether there are any other large sums of money outside of what I forecast, is that we should end up at the end of the year with operational reserves of 20,000.
Right.
That's around about 2/3 of our annual spending, which is roughly where we should be in terms of perhaps a bit on the high side, if anything. Probably we could get away with being, say, half our annual spending, which will be about 15,000. So we've probably got about 5,000 there, which could be used from operational reserves for a particular project. If you add that then to the SIL, and bearing in mind also the community solar fund, we get £2,000 per year. So this year we will get an additional 2,000. So that will eventually go to 4,000.
Oh, right, that's done it.
So 4,000 for community solar. So SIL will also probably produce something extra this year. I don't know what, but it could produce some extra funding. So there is, there is funding available.
On my simple maths, then the community solar would pay for the bulk, if not the bulk of the finger posts, and the community, the SIL grant will pay for the resurfacing. Bearing in mind that 7245, we need a bit of extra to get the additional area.
You're probably talking near a sort of 9.5 or so, I would have thought, by the time
Well, you buy 20
8.5.
9.5 what?
No, about 9,000, I would have thought.
for the extra
To
bit.
get the whole lot done.
Couldn't
No.
say 1,800 for the other?
No, 500.
No, £9,500 for
It's
the centre.
6,300 to do the surfaces which are there. So it looks to me it'd be over 1,000, but
I suggest you talk to this guy with Peter. No, I suggest you talk with Peter, or I will come as well. No, I'm not. I'm just saying you need to.
I know what you're doing, I say.
Brian?
I think we should look into what possible grants we could get to help towards this. You know, we've got.
If we go grants,
Really well.
we're going to be doing this 12 months down the line, 18 months, and who do you apply to, Brian? I mean, we've got the money. Let's use the money for the benefit of the community.
It's going to leave it very tight, isn't it?
Well, no, because the grant effectively that we get from the solar farm, that is a grant for the community. And we're going to have £4,000 this year. The SIL is something that we don't budget for, and that is income from houses being built. And that could be more than that if the other houses go up. Because that's planning and these other two planning sites.
We could do it, Brian, we could actually do it retrospectively, in other words, but it's going to be more difficult to do it retrospectively because if you apply for a grant on something you've already done, then they realise that you've obviously got the funds to do it. So you could, but then at some future project, I mean, if, for example, you decide to do something with the toilet block, for example, that would be a good target for a grant of some sort. But in this case, I think it's probably not really a runner because it's too late.
I agree with that. We'll be at it for ages.
So I think the answer is if somebody can go back to this company
Well, I'm dealing with it.
and seek the additional cost and ask them if they can defer start date till school goes back to school.
That's right.
Okay. Should we therefore give John a maximum that he can spend then?
I don't think you can possibly.
Because
Yes.
if a guy has given a quote and he's going to be asked to quote for an extra area, then I would have thought we should say this is our budget, and will you do it for the budget?
I think that's fair comment. I would do that to somebody. Yeah.
And effectively, it's £500 based upon if we were funding it purely from the SIL, which is 7972, and they're quoting 7245. It's that difference we've got to play with.
Well, I would have thought
Say 8,000.
8.5 max,
Yeah.
and if we can get it for any less than 8.5, then
But don't say it will do it for anyone. No.
But it gives John a
ballpark.
In other words, if he comes back and say, "I want £9,000," we say, "Well, we can't do it."
Yeah.
We cannot.
I mean, the only additional cost of them is the cost of that additional material.
Yeah.
Because they're actually here on site.
They're here, take up the tiles, spread the stuff.
Yeah.
So I suspect the whole lot would, the amount of labour cost is a day to do the whole lot. Or 2 days, say.
They'll probably do the lot in 2 days.
I should think a couple of days, yeah.
And yet if they came back to do the trim flower separately,
It would cost a lot more.
it'll be 2 days again.
Agreed. Okay, I'll agree with it.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, Brian.
Just to say that you should thank John for the hard work he's put in.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, John. Well done.
The stress of
Yeah.
So do we need to, can we therefore just minute this formally, please? Can we minute this formally, please, ladies and gentlemen? So the proposal is we would go with Shore Bond, the black and white, whatever it's called, and seek to do every single area. That's the 5 areas, so that's the proposal.
Within a limit.
Within a limit.
Yeah.
Within a limit.
I'll do what I can. Yeah.
Do we need to
Yeah,
say
We need to put an amount in there,
Yeah,
because otherwise someone will
definitely.
come back and say, well, you know, what was the limit?
8,000?
8,250.
8,250. And that gives £8,000
I go around with 225 quid, it's certainly how they do
No,
it.
£250, John.
8,350.
Yeah.
It's another thousand.
That's
Are we talking about,
8.5.
I think just,
are we talking about thousands or are we talking about 800?
if you looked at the total thing as, say, 8,500, then proportionately, I would have thought, looking at the size of the thing, that's about the right sort of proportion.
No, that's not nice. I agree with that.
Yeah.
And that still means it's cheaper than the GB Sport would have been just doing the one area.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So 8,400, so we say
8,500.
8,500. So our proposal is for a figure of 8,500.
You don't say 8.5 straight away.
Oh, no. But this is us agreeing
Yeah.
to go forward.
You'd like to go.
You're a hard lady, Dana.
Well, everybody else is hard. Why don't you? You stop being hard.
Okay, so to progress this matter, can I have a vote on this, please, on those points? Can all those in favour? Those against? And Peter, are you
Peter's
abstaining?
not.
When I negotiate it, I'd like to start off with 10 and see what I can do, but if you want to go with 8.5, 8.4,
10.
10,000?
just don't, I just chose not to vote, don't worry about it.
10,000.
All right, moving on.
Got it by majority.
£10.
Right,
Okay.
Coronation Oak,
Done.
Greenfield,
Done.
done. Notice board
Notice board
replacement.
place. Now, you'll be aware of the state of our notice board out here, which is not very prestigious for a village of this kind.
Declaring sort of personal because of where the location of it might be.
Don't think so.
Okay.
Because it doesn't benefit you in any way, does it? It doesn't benefit anybody. Basically what happened was, at the last meeting, we decided that the notice board definitely needs replacing. The one we've got there is not fit for purpose any longer. It lets damp in, it doesn't shut properly. It's a nightmare to put things in. It's in the wrong place. So it's pretty totally wrong. So Bob went to the last parish hall committee and asked them whether they would be prepared to allow us to put a notice board on the wall of the parish hall to match the one that they've got for the parish hall now. They decided they would agree in principle to it, provided it was of the same standard and style as the one they've already got. So it would be a wooden notice board with instead of having Brent Knoll Parish Hall on it, we'd have Brent Knoll Parish Council on it. And the suggestion was possibly putting it on the end wall here, Bob, wasn't it? Just on the end
Front
corner here.
corner.
Yeah, front corner, which would be much easier to manage, much safer for people looking at it. It wouldn't be near the road.
Yes, it's not so near the road.
And so that was the suggestion. Now I went to Paul Dixon and asked, because I know Paul Dixon provided the quote, or did the original notice board for the parish hall. He has come back now with a quote of 375. I think it was 375.
I think that's a good quote.
365 actually. It might be a little bit extra for the signage, but basically the 365 is the actual cost of the actual board itself, and he will do that to the same spec size of the one that's actually already there in Parish Hall.
Material.
As what he's done on that, the same as on that. It is oak. It is oak.
Has it got a name on it?
Did he make the first one?
Yeah.
I'll read exactly what he said. To supply all material necessary to fix new parish notice board, new notice board similar to the existing one at the parish hall, constructed in solid oak timber with Sundella pin board and plywood back, doors to be glazed with clear polycarbonate for safety. I've not had a price for sign rating, but I'm sure Alan Castle will do it for me. and whatever he charges will be added to my price. So his charge is 365 plus the cost of the signage.
Does that include a lock on it? Just
That includes exactly as the parish hall one is now.
What
So,
sort of size is it? What,
That's
how many A4s can you get in?
well, I had a look at it this evening actually, and actually it's quite a decent size of one out there, because I mean you've got quite a lot of
I
notices
think
on
it's
that
9
one.
on either side, isn't it?
Yeah, probably about the same as we've got now, I imagine.
And
so
you can do that in oak for 300 quid?
365.
I'm very surprised.
Yeah, the one that
I would like to propose
What?
we accept this quotation.
Nah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
just one other point. John very kindly went back to Area and Signs and got them to send some information. I think their one came out about 790, I think, something
What
like
about
that.
700 pounds?
And most of the ones I've seen from the magazines that we get coming round, I've made a few inquiries. Most of those are about £1,200. So it looks like pretty good value.
Yeah.
Well, if you can do it in oak for 360 pounds, frankly, you should bite his hand off.
Yeah, exactly.
And it'll
But I am
be
surprised.
symmetrical. Was that the right word?
Yeah, it
Yes.
Yes.
matches
It's
what's
going to
there.
match.
Good synergy.
Thank you.
It matches what's there,
Yeah.
and that's what the parish hall.
And the parish hall one, sorry, the parish hall, parish hall one is waterproof, is it?
He can do it within about 4 to 5 weeks. He would have it done during August for us, so that by the time we come to September, hopefully it will be in place. And he will also give us a quote to repair the other one by the post office, which has got some problems with the...
So can I have a proposal? Yes, you
Can I
propose.
propose it, but put a time scale when we'd like the work done by.
By the end of
We're
August.
getting very old, aren't we?
Can we ask it for before the end of August?
Before
Peter?
Yeah, I said yes. You haven't asked for a vote.
Without being asked.
Is that unanimous view on that?
Yes.
Right, okay.
If I could get a word in.
Do you want to say something?
No, I said he's
Oh
trying to
dear.
Well, that's important.
This is going to be more fun and games than now.
What, the toilet block?
Yeah, there we go.
Well, I think another half an hour.
At least, John, yes. And I've spent so much time on it, I insist that I have your absolute attention.
Is there another one?
One more for
One more for Owen, or is there?
Lovely, thanks, Brian.
Okay, right. I'll try and be very brief and quick, but the toilet block is, if you like, one of the parish council's responsible assets. And I think in the past we've done work there, like we've refurbished the outside or we've done the floors, and we thought, right, that's it, we can forget about it now, because we've done that and it'll be all right. Well, I think the truth of the matter is, like all assets, it needs to be regularly maintained. That's one thing. We can't get away from that if we're going to have the toilet block. So this report is being put together by Peter Binding of Harris Brothers and Collard, who are the Sedgemoor District Council approved people that look after toilet blocks. And he's given a pretty good resume, I met him here, resume of what he thinks we should do. The very interesting thing is the fact that we put a Tyrolean finish on the external side, and we're very pleased with ourselves, but we noticed it's now popping, as it were. He said, well, if you'd have painted it, and I was a big advocate of not painting it, if you'd have painted it, it wouldn't have popped. So that there you are, you live and learn. But essentially, he's looked at the externals, and don't be put off. It's very simple work, cleaning the gutters and the valleys, check the waterproofing, wash the the existing WPVC fascias that we had put on. And then what he's saying is he's going to repair the pot marks on the Tyrolean finish, and then he suggests we paint it. He said if you paint it a nice creamy colour or pale colour, and then apply a black border underneath it, round it, it will look 10 million times better than it does now. And he also suggests you just put some rosewood stain on the existing frames that you've got. He said they're all right. It just needs tidying up. Going into the toilets, again, he said there's nothing wrong with what we've got. He said you just need to maintain it and make it more usable, if you like, for want of a better word, and better. For instance, adjust and ease the doors. What he has suggested, though, is that you take out the existing urinal and you replace it with 2 China urinals, which are, if you like, serviced on a waterless basis. How that works, I don't know.
Go to Sanders. Go to Sanders in the gents there. They've got waterless.
So he's suggested those. He said they're very good. He's also suggested a new hand basin, and to site it in such a way that you haven't got pipes running down the wall and overflows running through the horrible gutter in the floor. You put it in the right place. In other words, you tidy it up, and use not wind taps. You use percussion taps, so they come up and switch off your water automatically. He's suggesting hot water be available, which the hot water units would be hidden at the back. They would provide a source of warmth for the back, so we wouldn't have to have the bar heater to maintain a temperature during the winter. You'd get 2 benefits from that. Cover up your exposed pipe work, paint it, tidy it. He says there's nothing wrong with it. Obviously do the floors, take out where the urinal is, there's a plinth, a stone plinth, knock it all out, level the floor, make it tidy. Ladies' toilet is just needs tidying up. Again, floor painting, ease and adjust the doors, possibly recite the wash hand basin or covering some pipe work, new taps. Other than that, he says it's perfectly okay. So I think, the other thing is, the ceiling, the wooden ceiling, he suggests that you just paint it and lighten it up.
Does say that the nice white, you can get white wood paint, for goodness sake.
Absolutely. So it's not.
What about lighting? He hasn't mentioned anything lighting.
No, he's going to get the electrician into.
Allowance to cover electoral adaptation conditions.
Yeah, and obviously he's not put any prices by this yet, but I've got a general feel for it. But you're going to say how we're going to pay for it.
Yeah, roughly quite.
This is the magic. Well, I don't know. I've got in my head maybe 5,000 or 6,000. Probably in my head.
Yes, I would have thought.
This is brilliant, because this is effectively, being naughty, we could use this as a tender inquiry.
We could.
We wanted to go out for competitive tenders.
Once I've got his price and the breakdown, I'd be happy to get some competitive prices. But I think before I do that, you're going to say, well, how are we going to pay for it? Because we haven't got any money. Okay, this is where Owen comes in, but I understand that we can apply for what they call a public works loan, which is a government loan you apply for. It's loans to parish, town and community councils, and you can get your money within sort of 7 days of applying for it, as long as your project is accepted, and you can set the term in which you want to pay this money back. So just supposing we have loan coming in a minute when I've done my thoughts, but just supposing you borrow £5,000 or £6,000 and you pay it back, bear in mind there are capital works in here which won't be coming up each year. You'll just be talking about refurbishing or repainting it. He said it should last you 5 to 10 years, all this work. So if you borrow this money over 5 years, say you're borrowing £1,000, at a reduced rate of interest, and that money would be put on the precept each year. In other words, it would make very little difference. It's providing a community service. It's you're getting a proper asset which will be properly maintained, properly modernised, and you're borrowing the money. The precept will pay for it. Owen has experience of these loans, and I've got all my information I need to do it, but you've had experience of this down at Wemden.
Yeah, Wemden had a similar situation where they bought some land to build allotments, which was the way they used the Public Works Loans Board. And I think at that time the rate of interest was an APR of about 7.5%, which is pretty good actually. I mean, I don't know what the current rates are, but that, by any borrowing standards, is pretty good borrowing. And they did theirs, because theirs was a much more significant amount of money. It was, I think they were buying land as well as setting up the allotments. I think it was about 50,000. So, but they took it out over a 25-year period. And what they simply do is they take the loan amount every year, and before they start discussing their precept, that's in the bottom line, as it were, as a cost to the council. The problem they had when they did it was the fact that some locals said that you were giving the council indebtedness for 25 years, and of course those councils may not be there, and probably wouldn't be there in 25 years' time, but you're leaving a debt for the villagers to pick up. So there was some criticism of it, but bearing in mind now the allotments are up and running, people see the community benefits of it. I'm told that they're very popular, and there's a waiting list for these things, because so that was my experience. And I actually went through the process of setting up that loan, and it was a very straightforward process. And as Colin said, I think we got the funds within 14 days of application. So it was a significant amount of money. It was £50,000. We're talking here probably about maybe 6,000.
Presumably, we would pay that off earlier.
Yeah.
If we had some influx of money.
You decide when you want to pay your money. You can pay it annually, half-yearly, however you want to do it. So it suits us with our precept.
Absolutely.
I think the rates of interest are favourable because it's government money, it's being used for community projects. This, I think, would satisfy, as Owen has indicated, a public works.
And you could go, you take Brian's point earlier on, you could go for grants. The problem is with toilet blocks is they're not a particularly attractive thing for somebody to give grants on. I mean, I just know full well if I went to Clark's, who I've got some knowledge of, the Clark's Foundation Trust, which give grants to all sorts of community projects. I think the one thing that they wouldn't do is support toilet blocks, because they see that as a local authority's obligation and not something that we should have to go for grants for. Whereas they might, for example, contribute to, say, play service equipment, they wouldn't do it for toilet blocks or anything of that kind. So that would be your problem with grants, I think, getting grants for that.
I mean, if we got the money in the way you just said, I'd be quite happy for it. But if we didn't, I would be loath to spend a lot of money on the toilet.
Yeah.
It is a
I
toilet,
see that.
it's not Buckingham Palace.
No, but on the other hand,
And it's also used by outsiders, very rarely by local people, apart from, say, on the fake day and things like that.
but I think
But if we got the money, fine.
I don't believe we would proceed until we actually got the ducks in order. But my view is that on the basis of what Colin has kindly laid out, if any of us were responsible for keeping it clean as is, and then compare it with what it's likely to be if this process was applied, you'd be much more willing to keep it nice and clean if it was a nice environment to begin with, rather than having to clean what we've got there. So it'll be maintained for the future in a better way, I believe.
Or we might be able to find more competitive rates, as you're saying, for cleaning contract rather than current rates we've got, which you said.
That's usually it, isn't it?
We may be able to, may not, but
Couple of things. I mean, in terms of if we're right, this is £5 or £6 grand. I think that seems to me very reasonable with what they're talking about doing here. and it's well worth doing. I mean, in terms of borrowing, in principle, I don't have a problem with borrowing. In fact, that's how the parish council paid for the village green. That was done by a public works loan board back in the 70s, and it was paid off over 25 years. Because when we first came on, there was an annual payment that was going out still to pay the public works loan board off. The only query I would say is to some extent, I wonder whether it would be worth us in effect borrowing it from ourselves, which is in effect from our reserves, because the reserves are there for a rainy day. You could forecast that over 3 or 4 years we put back a certain amount of reserves each time, and it just seems if we're borrowing money from one side where at the same time we've got 15 grand in effect sat in the bank doing nothing, why not use our reserves?
About 20,000, did you?
Well, some of that's already gone because we were still talking about if we've got 6 months worth of spending left in our reserves, that's still about 15 grand. But I mean that we can decide later when we. But I mean I would not have a problem going either way. But I think it would be less complicated to explain to the residents than actually having to say we've taken out a formal loan. We would just do it and we'd repay it over a number of years.
And of course, the effect of adding, say, 3,000 or 4,000 to the precinct actually would be very insignificant in terms of total cost to the taxpayer. So.
We could probably make a better decision, but from the great sound.
I think we should do
I think we want to get our ears.
Mr. Chairman, I'm more than happy to button this down and get firm quotes, but we've discussed the 2 ways of financing now, either borrowing from ourselves or buying them. As long as we are happy that it's one or t'other, and that subject to everything being okay, then yeah, I'm happy to do it, because we can see an end to the project.
We have. It's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, we're always
Talking about it.
talking about it. I mean, it's not. It does need tidying up. It's a bit of a sad place.
Yes, the only problem is that most of us screw out spending a penny. Moved on.
Well, of course, that is the alternative, to have a machine where you pay to go in.
Oh!
20p.
Did we have a vote on that?
No, I think it ought to be all pennies, and then we have a machine to say, if you want to buy a penny, they're £1 each.
Do we want to vote on the principle?
Can we have a vote on the principle, please? And the proposal is that
Taking
we
a stage further.
take this to a next stage of seeking quotations and reporting back accordingly.
Yeah.
All in favour?
Thank you.
Thank you, Colin, that's excellent.
And very well done, Colin.
Right,
Hardly.
Cedar Close bench. Have we actually...
Well, one of the things that came up as a result of the bench being delivered was a terrible state of the piece of ground that it sits on. Obviously Sedgemoor do it at the moment. When I rang Sedgemoor up, of course, they're amazing. I mean, they came out the same morning when they could do it. But of course they left it in a bit of a mess. It wasn't done very well. It was just kind of taking the top service on it. It looked awful. But we couldn't really well go back and criticise it because they're doing it for us for nothing. So it seemed to me as though perhaps it's something we ought to add to Jason's contract, so that Jason does it regularly and keeps it looking nice.
Yeah.
It's very noticeable because I went up with Dave Welland and he's going to fix it. I've got the bolts, but luckily the bench fits on the slabs. It is on the right side, but the grass is encroaching onto the slabs.
Is it a big area?
Well, it's big enough to take the...
No, I'm thinking of for Jason.
For Jason,
Oh,
I'd need to get Jason to go along there and say, can you please tell us what that would actually cost?
Feather and a pony.
I think you're right. I think let's get Jason to do it.
Yeah.
So
Can we get the quote and come back to you in September with a firm quote on
Yeah,
that?
good.
please.
Mr. Chairman, could we also ask Jason then whether he could look at strimming that patch of land by the fencing church land so we can see.
Yes.
This is
How
one
tidy it
by
is.
the leaf.
Yes.
Yeah, and then where we can then cite a proper
Notice board.
notice for it. Please.
Okay.
Thank
Right.
you.
Village green maintenance issues. I don't know.
It's Gina,
Yeah,
information.
we've got Stars Across Cricket Way.
Stars Across Cricket
Well,
Way.
Oh, no, that's,
Peter Phillips is,
yeah.
That's still
I've got a
going.
number now for Peter
Yeah.
Phillips.
that's ongoing.
Ongoing.
Yeah, I'll follow that.
The green maintenance on the village green.
This was the thing that cropped up last time, wasn't it?
I haven't done anything, but I will do.
Thank you.
So David's got that in hand, I think.
Unregistered footpaths.
Well, that's all I've got about it. All I would ask is that everybody look at footpaths that come across in the village. If there are any that don't appear on the map, then we ought to put them on the map. Oh, I'm sorry about that.
This map you kindly gave me,
Yeah,
all these numbers,
No, we haven't got that.
they're all
Well, the first thing is that all the councillors should have maps.
Anybody has, actually.
No, I haven't.
Well, no,
this was given to me as a hard copy by Peter.
Oh,
He
we
gave the
need
chairman
to
No,
know.
the clerk supplied us all with them
Yeah.
when we became members of the council.
What?
Yeah, I'm not sure it was before you joined us, actually, Blair, actually, to be honest with you. I've got the master copy for you. Remember that, you don't remember that, Bella?
No.
We've
No,
never
I
had.
haven't.
No.
I've never had.
Well, I used
Is it
to
on
do
that?
this
Yeah, I
before.
haven't lost it.
It looks like we need to do something a bit more,
Yeah.
exact.
If we could do an A3 instead of an A5.
Once I've stopped dealing with the auditors, I'll try and do it.
So the issue is,
That's A4.
this
It's got A4.
this map has got all the ones that are registered. And the question is, once you get copies, can we advise the clerk any that are not registered?
Even if it's a walkthrough or anything like that, a public access.
So anywhere you walk, see if it's on there. Okay.
But not
No, because you might be walking illegally. This is a legal place where you can walk.
Where's our boundaries from? Because this
I've got
is...
a master's degree of those, I think.
Can
I'm
you
sure.
say parish
David wants one as
Are
well.
you able to scan your master copy and then email it?
Hopefully, yes, that's what I'm trying to do,
Please.
yes.
The problem is it's printing what if you haven't got a printer.
We just need to
And you
check.
have a printer.
You need to check
Why?
anything that's not.
Okay.
Fair comment.
Okay, so that's okay.
Field.
Right.
Drainage at the rear of the
The
church.
one when you come up to
Anything on that,
go
David?
down.
Drainage at the rear of the church, the problem with the water coming down
I don't know, there's nothing near, no place.
Dry.
Yeah.
there. Is it?
Anything further on the discussion we had last time on the drainage?
Drainage.
Because we were talking about possibly doing some extra digging across the diversion and that sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
I'm dealing with that.
You're dealing with
Yeah.
that? Okay, so we can leave that to next
Yeah.
time. Monthly SID and crime reports, updated information and report.
There's quite a bit here actually. The SID obviously is working,
I saw it
just
tonight,
about.
56.
Sometimes not always.
I tried.
You saw the note I sent to Richard and the reply Richard sent back to me. I mean, clearly we were asking for some data really from him, and he said, well, in view of the rather sort of strange way this thing operates, it's very hard to get data off it anyway. And in any event, it probably wouldn't be in a format that you could understand what it says. So basically, he was very reluctant to get any data off the machine. But in any event, he said it's not working properly anyway, consistently. So therefore, the data might even be a bit suspect because it's not working properly.
Just as an aside, I saw that, I don't know whether that email went around to everybody, but I said to Owen, I actually took great exception to his comments because I asked him for data incessantly when I joined the council, and very reluctantly he did give me some, and it was the unmodified data, so it was the raw data straight off the machine, and it didn't need a genius just to put it into an Excel spreadsheet to come out with some meaningful outputs. The danger was that when I asked him to give me the locations so that I could then tie it up to whether it was in Brent Street, Burton Lane or whatever, against the numbers coming out, the numbers he gave me didn't tie up with where they said he was because the dates on the machine and all that. So it was all a bit of a mess. I think the answer is, do we as a council want a SID, yes or no? Is the first thing we have to decide. If the answer is yes, then do we get rid of what we've got and get something new? So we're looking for more money. That might be something for grants.
It would be, actually.
And I would suggest that we review the process for how that